Hello, I'm Burt Green. This is the Burt Locker. This is an MMA show, sports show that I like to do. It's just light and fun. I talk about sports that I like. This main one is focused on mixed martial arts, the UFC. This one looking specifically at UFC Vegas 79 that happened literally just last night. So having a look at how my bets got on, they were terrible. They were as advertised this week. Also, there's been a really big matchup announced for December, and I'll be looking at that as well. So let's get cracking. UFC Vegas 79 bets. None of my bets came off because they were all completely trash. They were all garbage, especially the treble. Betting on Muhammad Usman by knockout, what was I thinking? Do you know what I mean? That guy couldn't beat an egg. Do you know what I mean? I'm kidding. He was pretty good. You know, it was a fairly good, if uninspired, performance, if I'm totally honest. He looks a lot scarier than he actually is. Also, Brian Battle obviously got the submission. I even identified that he would probably get the submission. In my actual video, I said the better bet here is probably the submission, but I'm going for the TKO knockout just because the odds are longer. There was a reason. You know what I mean? It's yeah. And who was it? I had Dan Ige by knockout as well, and that was a bit of a weird one. That was a weird fight. Anyways, overall though, on my picks, 8 out of 11. That's not terrible. I even picked Cody Brundage. Cody Brundage was a huge underdog. I mean, did he win by disqualification? Yes, he did. But I mean, his opponent did elbow him in the back of the head. I don't know how. It didn't seem that bad. But then the doctors called it off. But I don't know. Hey, a win's a win. Know your rules. You've got to. Like, if you elbow somebody clearly in the back of the head, then also not being funny, but if you get a hard elbow right to the back of the head, there's a reason you're not allowed to hit to the back of the head, because it does exponentially more damage. So actually, look, why should the fighter then continue when he's been compromised by an illegal shot? I think any illegal shot should be a point straight away, and if the fighter can't continue, then it is a disqualification. But for me, the first eye poke, take a point. The first fence grab, take a point. The first nut shot, take a point, regardless of intent. And I do think that you would see I think you would see fighters protecting their weapons an awful lot more. I think you would see less eye pokes if it was a point deduction straight away as standard, because it removes any kind of any subjectivity, it removes any confusion. If it's just a standardised rule, it's not up to the referee then. It's like, well, that was an eye poke, that is a point. And it removes any ambiguous kind of decisions, really. So anyway, so not too bad. 8 out of 11 on picks. That's not too bad. I've done better, done worse. So my biggest takeaways from UFC Vegas 79 was, again, as I mentioned, Muhammad Usman. He looks a lot scarier than he actually is, to be fair. The Dirty Bird, Tim Means, he's still got it. You give him the right opponent and he will deliver a fantastic fight every single time. I'm a huge fan of the Dirty Bird. And his fight against Fialho was superb. It got fight of the night as well. Really happy that it did. But go back and watch that one. It was on the prelims. If you didn't catch it, it was a sensational fight. Really, really good. I won't even ruin the ending for you. Then you got Marina Rodriguez. As predicted, I did say that Waterson had no chance in this fight because she lost the first fight fairly handily, and in a rematch, the younger fighter will win, except they'll win faster. And it was fast because the first one went to a decision. This one, no decision required, because that was a retirement level beatdown. If you want to see a retirement level beatdown, watch Marina Rodriguez against Michelle Waterson. Look, credit to Michelle Waterson for the heart that she showed in there. I wouldn't have wanted to take any of those shots that she took there. She could have looked for a way out way before she did. And for that, all the credit in the world. All the credit in the world. However, it's when you're at the point in your career where your biggest attribute that people are commending you for is the fact that you can take a good beating, it's probably time to hang it up. Waterson's always frustrated me because I do feel like if she had more of a killer instinct, if she was a little bit meaner, if she had a bit of a mean streak in her, She could have probably been a champion at one point, but I think that ship has now sailed. She was too happy to lose too many decisions, just high-fiving and hugging the whole way and smiling, just being happy to be there. If she'd have shown a little bit more aggression, I feel like she could have gone a bit further. But you know what? Yeah, she's a very nice lady. She's one of the sweethearts of the sport. I don't think there's anybody that can say a bad word about her. She just seems like a wonderful person. She's a very skilled fighter as well. She's put on some tremendous fights. But the problem is when you're taking beatings like that and you're at the age of 37, it's probably time to think about doing something else. I've never heard her on the analyst desk. Does she get onto the ESPN desk at all? She could probably make a very good living doing that. She seems pretty smart, and she obviously knows the fight game really well. So look, I hope that the beating wasn't too savage. I hope that, because it looked bad. It was a pretty nasty beatdown. But yeah. Anyways. Next for Marina Rodriguez, unfortunately, it's looking like it's likely going to be another rematch, because you look at the top 6 and there's only 2 fighters that she hasn't fought already. She lost one to Carla Esparza, I believe. I bet she'd like to run that back, because Carla Esparza is still sat at ranked number 1 in the division. So she beats her, she moves right up. She lost just recently to Verna Jandiroba. She might want to run that one back as well. There's also Amanda Lemos. That was an entertaining fight. I'd watch that one every week, honestly. So there's an opportunity there for her in the top 6 to try and get redemption, try and get one of those back. Although there are a couple of people she hasn't fought in the top 6, being Jessica Andrade and Tatiana Suarez. Either of those fights would work for me. I really like Mariana Rodriguez. She's fantastic, got a great fighting style, and man, that tie clinch, can't mess around with that. Those knees to the body were nasty. So yeah, but really, she's really fun to watch. Look forward to seeing her again. Bryce Mitchell has some of the most insane grappling I think I've ever seen, because look, Dan Ige is not a bad grappler, far from it. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, he's a judo brown belt. You saw in the first round that Bryce Mitchell did struggle to get him down with the takedowns, because Dan Ige's hips are insanely strong. He's got very good hips. But yeah, then the grappling just took out. It's the chain grappling, and just every time he was getting the takedown, he was going straight into mount, which is just insane. Fair play to Bryce Mitchell. He was insane. He also seems a little bit insane. I'm not a fan of the old God Squad thing. I'm not a huge fan of that. He brings a Bible into the octagon. Look, fair play to him. Look, if you are religious, then I think that religion has a lot of benefits for a lot of people, and if it keeps you on the straight and narrow, and ultimately most religions boil down to try not to be a dick, and I can get behind that kind of message. But when he's talking about he thinks that the fires are in Hawaii are from Satan, started deliberately. I don't know. You could definitely see Michael Bisping had the producers in his ears saying, because basically after the fight, Mitchell said that he wanted to do a prayer with Dan Ige. He was like, "Will you let Dan Ige pray?" And Bisping was just like, no. Just because you could tell that he had the producers in his ear saying, "We do not have time for a sermon from brother Bryce Mitchell. Shut it down, get out of there." And yeah, Bisping did a great job, to be fair, because he did it in a kind of nice way. He just kind of didn't really acknowledge it. It's like, will you let Dan pray? And it's just like, sorry, gotta go. Sorry, didn't catch that. Yeah, it was very good. Fair play to Michael Bisping. I thought that was actually a bit of a weird interview. It was a bit of a tricky situation, and I think he did a fantastic job, honestly, because that was definitely an odd moment. Definitely odd. The main event was a real shame. Rafael Fiziev blew his knee out in the second round. It was only just getting going. It really was. It was a fun fight. Obviously, you had the grappling edge for Gamrot. You had the combinations from Fiziev on the feet. It was just getting cooking, and it was a real shame. It'd be nice if they could run that back, but hopefully Fiziev has a speedy recovery, because knees are tricky, man. They're tricky. So hopefully he can get that fixed up pretty sharpish. So next up for Gamrot, you got to think maybe a Michael Chandler would be on the cards. If Conor doesn't actually come back, Michael Chandler would be a great fight for Mateusz Gamrot. Or Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier probably needs another fight. But either way, Mateus Gamrot needs that headline. He needs the that marquee fight, I think. I mean, this was a marquee fight for him. It was just a shame that it ended how it did. Do you a favour, if you enjoy this content, hit subscribe. It'll obviously, the bell notifications will let you know when all the videos drop. I do fight previews every week. They're casuals guides. They're really good, to be fair, because they come in at under 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes, and I do the entire fight card. It's information on every fighter, every fight. I believe this week we've got Dawson versus Bobby Green, which should be an interesting main event at the very least. So yeah, anyway, subscribe, hit the bell notification. You know what to do. The big matchup that has been announced is going to be for UFC 296, 16th of December, and it is going to be Tony Ferguson. He's got another fight booked against Paddy Pimblett. So the internet's been going a bit wild about this. Bloody Elbow slammed it as terrible matchmaking, or people, various people have been slamming it, saying, "Oh, this is just kind of Dana White privilege for Paddy Pimblett, you know, getting an aged like Tony Ferguson, just being Tony Ferguson being fed to this young prospect." I don't really see it as that way, honestly. For me, this is a winnable fight for either guy. This isn't bad matchmaking at all, far from it. This is actually very good matchmaking. It's very clever for a few reasons, actually. So this is a chance for Tony Ferguson to come back into it. And Paddy Pimblett, he's got some star power. They can't be wasting that star power on, with the greatest respect, the Jared Gordons of the world. Look, if Paddy Pimblett gets beaten by Tony Ferguson, at least it's still a marquee fight that's going to help them move the needle in terms of pay-per-views. And that's why they're doing it this way, I think. Because look, make no mistake, Tony Ferguson could win this fight. He didn't look out of place against Bobby Green. He was winning the fight, and then he took one of the worst eye pokes I think I've ever seen. It was a bad one. And okay, you get 5 minutes, but 5 minutes when you get a really bad eye poke, that's not going to do anything. Your eye is still compromised at that point. I'm not saying that that's the reason that he lost, but here are the facts. Tony Ferguson was winning. Then he got poked in the eye. Then he didn't win. So, I don't know. Do with that what you will. Against Michael Chandler, first round definitely went to Tony Ferguson. He looked good in that fight until he got sent to the Shadow Realm, obviously. So, look, Tony Ferguson, he's on a 6-fight skid, but look at who he's lost to. They're all elite. They're all the very top echelon of the sport, with the possible exception of Bobby Green. But Bobby Green's very good as well. I'm not saying that Bobby Green isn't very good, but I'm just saying you're probably not putting him in the same bracket as like your Justin Gaethje's and and so forth. So look, Tony Ferguson in this fight is going to have the height, he's going to have the reach. I think on the feet, Tony Ferguson probably has an advantage. I would say that his striking, whilst unorthodox, is probably slightly better than Paddy's. Paddy tends to leave his chin out. He tends to throw a little bit kind of wild, and he usually has a bit of an advantage with the reach, and he's not going to have that in this fight. So, for me, if Paddy Pimblett's probably going to do what got him to the dance in the first place, he's probably going to want to turn this into a grappling match. I think in a grappling match, Paddy Pimblett probably could beat Tony, because look, Tony Ferguson he's a top level black belt, 10th planet. He's very good, very unorthodox, and he's just extremely well versed in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But Paddy Pimblett is an elite level grappler. Don't let his silliness fool you. He is an elite level fighter. He really is. Like, grappling is where he is at his best. And I feel like we need to see him doing more of that, especially against Tony Ferguson. I think against Tony Ferguson, there are a lot of things that Tony can do on the feet that could really spoil the party if you're Paddy Pimblett. So look, for me, that's a good matchup. This is good matchmaking. It's a winnable fight for both guys. It's a fight that I'm interested in. I'm interested to see it. I did say that I think Tony Ferguson needs just one more fight just to see where he is. I thought actually a better fight would have been maybe a Jim Miller for UFC 300. I still think, look, potentially they could still do that, but that was the fight that I kind of wanted, one that I was lobbying for. I still think that's the matchup to make, honestly. Jim Miller, Tony Ferguson, UFC 300 would be absolutely superb. But I don't hate this matchup either. It's not bad matchmaking. It's not Tony Ferguson being fed to a young prospect. Honestly, this is a winnable fight for both guys, and that's what good matchmaking is. So, yeah. that's about all I've got time for this week. So obviously during the week I'll be doing my casuals guide. Obviously Dawson versus Bobby Green is coming up on Saturday. There's a couple of fights on there that look pretty interesting, to be fair. Alex Morono against Jacqueline Buckley. That'll be a fun one. That'll be a tear up. Yeah, there's a few good fights on there. Obviously the main event obviously very good as well. And I'll be doing some terrible bets. I'll be looking at my NFL Fantasy League. There's a lot to be done this week, guys. And yeah, so until next time, keep those odds long and those bets terrible.